Brad Olsen is raising capital to explore and film the secrets hidden under the ice in Antarctica. He has explored some of the world's most interesting and mysterious sites already, and he has written multiple books on the topic. He expects to find evidence of ancient civilizations as well as possibly abandoned military bases under the ice and other artifacts. Antarctica has been sealed off for civilians until now, and there have only been scant reports of what's going on down there, which have not been confirmed because nobody's ever been there except the military. This film could really be a game changer for the disclosure movement, as they could collect the hard evidence that so many skeptics seek. We talked with Brad recently for Intelligence Storm. Let's hear what he had to say. Hello, Brad. Welcome to Intelligence Storm. It's great to have you here.
Hey, Joseph, thanks for having me. Really great to talk about this upcoming documentary film project we have and all the potential it has for making a really fascinating documentary.
Awesome. For people who aren't familiar with you, can you give us a quick summary of your background as far back as you want to go? That's
Sure.
interesting for people.
Well, I grew up in the Midwest in Illinois, and while traveling a lot with my family and in Boy Scouts around the Midwest, realizing there's a big world out there. And upon graduating college from Illinois State University in 1988, I self-financed my first trip to Europe for 3 months, traveling around with a backpack and meeting Australian and New Zealanders. They're saying, 3 months, mate. We've been on the road for 3 years. I said, well, how do you do that? They said, well, you get a job and you work your way around the world. So I took that advice to heart. And a couple of years later, I moved to Japan and I taught English in Kyoto, Japan for 14 months, self-financed another trip around the world, this time all through Asia, Southeast Asia, down to Australia for half a year, back up through Asia, India, Egypt, Europe again, and then all the while writing my very first book called World Stompers, a Global Travel Manifesto, still in print. Got my feet wet in publishing and travel writing. Did a couple books with another publisher called Hunter Publishing, Extreme Adventures, Northern California and Hawaii. So I like to do active sports, and realized where I had a good forte and a good distributor at that time, which I'm still with, Independent Publishers Group, became a publisher and did the rest of my own books, which is a series in the Sacred Places series around the world, North America and Europe, published other authors such as Karen Tate did Sacred Place of Goddess. So I have a worldview, and I continue to travel the whole time and working on a new series of books that have come out called the Esoteric series. That's modern esoteric, future esoteric, and beyond esoteric. And so all the while delving into these mystery sites and all the riddles they pose while continuing to travel around the world, including 5 years ago, I went down to South America and Antarctica. It was a 4-month trip, but 26 days on a sailboat down to Antarctica on the northern tip of the Palmer Peninsula. Just kind of get my toes wet in the water, but realizing this is a continent that is just chock full of mystery and intrigue and so many stories to tell that haven't really fully been disclosed to the world. So that's why we're proposing a documentary or TV series to delve into many of these mysteries.
So, what do you think that we might find or you might find down there in some of these sites? Anything dangerous, or what kind of surprises might we discover?
Well, the real danger is just the travel down there itself, because it is a very inhospitable climate. The only time anybody can really travel down there is from November to early March. So we're filming this in early March right now. That's pretty much the end of the season. Everybody who's been down there to travel as a tourist is leaving. During the winter down there, there's only 1,000 people in some of the over the year seasonal bases that is the fifth largest continent in the world. It's just amazing when you think how many people, almost 8 billion of us in the world, and the fifth largest continent only has 1,000 during their winter. So the danger is really not being prepared for extreme elements, but it could also be what is down there. And there are rumors of some under ice bases. Don't know if we'll have access to go into those, but if we stumbled upon them, I don't know, could that be dangerous? Maybe. Ice cave-ins or crevices, trekking over glaciers is always a concern. But there's a travel company called Antarctic Logistics Expeditions, which I went to their office in Puerto Arenas, Chile, 5 years ago when I was down there. And then I followed up and went to their office in Salt Lake City. And they assured me they can take a crew, film crew, myself, anyone else, to just about any point in Antarctica. Yes, there are some areas that are no-fly zones and no-go zones, one in particular near the South Pole, which is the rumored hole in the ice. So perhaps going there could be a danger, but certainly would like to go to the South Pole and just to investigate and also talk about all the scientific projects that are working there, including the Ice Cube project and many others. So there are some other locations I could tell you about that I've been researching. And in fact, when I was down there, I took it upon myself to talk to anybody who had information about Antarctica, from other sea captains that were taking excursions down there to anybody on one of the 6 bases that we visited during my expedition. And my line of questioning was the same with everybody: is, have you heard of anything paranormal or extraterrestrial, such as supposedly there are 3 motherships poking through the ice? And they've been known since the 1970s, and our alphabet agencies have named them Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And I think I've pinpointed one of them. I do a conference presentation. In fact, I'll be speaking at the MUFON Symposium in Dallas, Texas this July, and I'll be giving my Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica talk. And in it, I will show a location which happens to be in the German claim in the 1930s, New Schwabenland, of what looks like a massive craft under the ice. I think it would be one of those 3. So definitely want to go to the Conan base. There's actually a seasonal West German on old maps, but now it's a Germany base. They still do research out there. And in 2013, they were excavating the site, and I show pictures of what it looks like. Some remote viewers from the Farsight Institute also did remote viewing of this location and determined it's some kind of massive machine, long defunct, no longer operational, but built for giants. So we definitely want to go to the Conan base. And then while we're in the Queen Maud Land, as it's known now, but in the time of pre-World War II, New Schwabenland, go to the Schumacher Ponds, which are lakes that never freeze because of the geothermal activity. And in the hills nearby, called the Schumacher Hills, also never freeze. That's where base 211 was supposed to be. So snooping that out, I don't know, maybe we can get down and get some filming under the ice and change history, because it's a pretty good chance that this area of New Schwabenland was hit with nuclear bombs in 1958 during Project Argus, still a classified program, still top secret, can't get much information. They say they were shooting nukes up into the atmosphere to test if they could get the pollution to leave through these holes. But if we were to bring Geiger counters down there, Joseph, and find out that that area had been nuked, that would be historic. That would be earth-changing. Similarly, I know we're one of the 3 pyramids, the best one, the 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer, perfectly 4-sided pyramid in the Ellsworth range And ALE, this Antarctic Logistic Expedition Group, has assured me they know where it is. We could land there, although they never have, but to also investigate that. And if we were to find out that it was fashioned by intelligent hands, that's also a game changer. That's absolutely historic, and we certainly want to put that on the itinerary for filming.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Probably you know about this Charles Hapgood intelligence that the poles were in hundreds of different places, even in Wisconsin at one point. So Antarctica was at one point not ice. So any pyramids or traces of ancient civilizations would be just amazing. Any kind of artifacts around those pyramids, that would be really interesting for a lot of people. Of course, the bases, but the more ancient sites are also a big game changer for everything we know.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the another location I would like to film at is called the Beardmore Glacier, and it's approximately between McMurdo Station, the largest base in Antarctica, an American base, and the Amundsen Scott South Pole Research Station. And this is the site of high strangeness, a lot of paranormal activity, a lot of UFO activity by several different whistleblowers. My colleague Linda Moulton Howe has interviewed Brian S. He saw silver craft flying around the Beardmore Glacier, as well as Spartan 1 and 2, who said they have located a giant black basalt UFO type craft, possibly one of the Nina Pinta and Santa Maria. Certainly worth investigating. But at the top of the Beardmore Glacier is a location called Mount Buckley, and that is where the Shackleton or the Scott team that was going to the South Pole discovered ferns in the fossil record, proving that Antarctica had once been a tropical location. So definitely would want to check out Mount Buckley and maybe even take some fossil samples there, because this is one of those locations that's absolutely historic. It's also where Amundsen went up with his sled team and his dogs and beat out the Scott expedition by 35 days, the race to the South Pole in 1913. So the documentary could also have quite a bit of historical context as far as the early discovery of this frozen continent.
That's awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Um, what do you think are some kind of unknown things we might discover, like if you're exploring these sites? And I mean, I've heard rumors, and this is not something that's really well substantiated, but that some people had found, whether it's the military or some groups had found some remnants of ancient civilizations, but that they had actually looted a lot of those. They had taken. They didn't want it to be discovered by explorers like you, so they had taken it and hidden it. But there was still evidence, like where it was, like cities and things that are just evidence of ancient civilizations. Do you have any kind of clues of anything like that, or is it just the pyramids and the bases?
Mm. Well, being a book author of esoteric series of books, including much of what I've talked about here in my book, Beyond Esoteric, in my books on the esoteric series, I include a lot of this Antarctica material, and basically working with other researchers, including Michael Sala, Linda Moulton Howe, as I mentioned, other researchers of Antarctica, I've come across quite a bit of information and detail. And Dr. Michael Sala, good friend and colleague of mine, sent me quite a few places to investigate, let's say. He's not been down there, but he knew I was going down there 5 years ago, and he sent me some Google map logistics and locations to check out, including some GPS coordinates, what look like ancient cities. Okay, so I have the location on those. Hopefully we'll be able to go there and check them out. But as far as stuff being taken away, well, it's very, very difficult to move anything heavy or just because everything needs to be taken in and taken out of Antarctica. It's part of the Antarctica Treaty. Even if you change locations of a base, you have to completely strip the old base and leave nothing behind. So to take it all away would be very difficult because you have to bring everything you need in as well, all your supplies, all your food, all your everything you need to live. So it absolutely would be hard to remove that stuff. So if it were there, it might still be there, and that's another thing we can try to discover.
That's super exciting. There's so many things. I'm sure it's not going to be enough time because you're only going to be able to go to so many sites, but hopefully it could lead to other trips if it's a success. And I can't imagine people would not be interested in this information. It's got to be one of the most exciting. It's the only thing that could be more interesting is going to other planets, but Earth is more interesting than other planets because we live here. It's our home, and we don't know anything about Antarctica really.
That's true. I often say in my presentation at conferences that the last great unexplored regions of planet Earth are the lowest depths of the ocean and what's under the ice in Antarctica. They're still complete mysteries, and the landmass of Antarctica is still undefined. What is below the ice, as you mentioned, with the old maps, the Piri-Reis maps and others, which show Antarctica not decades, but centuries before it was discovered in 1820, land masses that are locked under the ice. So there's still quite a bit of mystery of the geophysical nature of its shorelines and what might be trapped under there. The other thing is Antarctica is the most volcanically active continent in the world. So the volcanism and geothermal activity could create large under ice domes as well as rivers that flow out from hot springs and create large cavities as well. In fact, that is where the party from the Schumacher team, he was the pilot that landed a seaplane in the Schumacher Ponds. They went to investigate an under river cave system and apparently found it. And that's where they put in base 211. It's also reported that this giant hole under the ice near the South Pole, where in Admiral Byrd's diary says he flew into it, it's so big, he wasn't afraid to go into it. Admiral Byrd also discovered the South Pole from a plane in 1929. So he knew that this hole would exist. You'd see it when you're up that high. And presumably he went down into the hole and then was escorted by a couple what he described as Flugelrods or UFOs with Nazi insignia and German accented pilots who then escorted him to an inner domain city called the Ariani. And there he met the master. And I think that was probably what the Germans called their New Berlin base. So there's probably two locations they were at, base 211, which could be accessed by the U-boats, and then this pre-existing high-tech civilization under the ice near the South Pole called the domain of the Ariani.
I'm going to look into that. That's really interesting. And this will be the last question. Did Byrd meet the Antarctic Germans, or was that an inner Earth civilization, or were they kind of working together, or we don't know?
I'd say that all the above, that the pilots that escorted him to the domain of the Ariani had German or Nordic accents. He said in his diary, they were flying high-tech UFO type craft called Flugelrods. And he went to meet the master, who seemed otherworldly or very advanced, telepathic as well. And obviously this city in 1946, when Byrd wrote in his diary, he went to this location, had pre-existed far before the Third Reich. So they probably teamed up with them. And I was just doing an interview with Elena Danan, and she made the connection of Ariani being very similar to Aryans, the Aryan race that
Yeah.
the Germans were so fascinated with, as well as finding these inner Earth civilizations, teaming up with them and calling it their own New Berlin base.
That's awesome. I have goosebumps. So hopefully we can share that passion with other people, and we can finance this. And I'm excited. And thank you for spending the time with us. And we'll check back in at some point once we've made some more progress. And and thank you for doing this for us on behalf of all of us, because it's definitely not can't just buy a ticket and go there. So it's a huge expedition. So we're grateful for the work that you do.
Well, thank you, Joseph. And just as I say with the books that I write and publish, I'd only want to produce something that I think would be of value to people or that I would be proud to own myself. And a documentary such as this would be definitely something I would pay good money to go to a movie theater to see or rent on a streaming service. So I think that the legs are there, and this is quality content that people would be very hungry to see and understand. And if just one or several of these turned out to have some of this information that I just described, it's a game changer. It's Earth history. I mean, it's been often said that disclosure will come from Antarctica, and this could very well be the documentary that brings that evidence to the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, and we'll see you in another episode. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
You bet, Joseph. Thanks for having me on.